Hey guys, this is Tyler here. I'm here in Tallinn, Estonia, and I want to talk to you guys why I think politics doesn't matter for MGTOW guys very much. Okay, so I've spoken before about presidential elections of 2020 in America, and I briefly covered about politics in certain countries, but not very much. And I also believe this isn't a topic MGTOW guys should be too obsessive about, unless it has to do with personal decisions they make regarding a country for relocation, like if it's how the politics may affect tax rates or how it would affect a visa, being able to obtain a visa, or any other issue of that nature. Issues that would have personal impact on their life. Otherwise, I don't think it's something a MGTOW guy should spend much time focused on. I think what they should focus more on is solutions to their problem, areas of their life they can actually control. That may be relocation, it may be changing a job, or it could be finding a different relationship if you're in it, or leaving a relationship, these types of things. Because at the end of the day, unless you reach a high level of political office, you're probably not going to be able to change and affect politics very much. And this is just the reality of the age that we live in. And it's always been this way, honestly. I think it's never been a situation in most of history and Western civilization that we've been able to control the outcomes as individuals in a society. If you're a very influential person, you have lots of wealth, you're a leader on the very highest political office, yes, you would obviously you would have much more influence. But if you're not in any of those situations, you probably won't. It just leads into a situation where you think you control a lot more than what you do, and you waste time worried about who's winning X election, how long X person's going to be in office, and it can actually make you really angry. And it also maybe strain relationship with some other people because you're desiring a certain outcome and this doesn't happen, rather than actually focus on what you can control. And as Andrew Henderson discussed from Nomad Capitalist, just simply go to where you're treated best, or go to where you feel like your values are parallel to that country or society. You don't need to stay around, honestly. And this is something I've realized, is that especially as a guy, you're going to be used often and by many countries as simple fodder for the system. At the end of the day, it's really up to you to make that call whether you want to be a part of that or you don't. And I think often too, as a man, it's often best to vote with your feet and just simply to leave, to go somewhere else. You can create a life for yourself that you envision in your home country. If you desired living a certain way or having certain relationships, you can achieve that. You can live in a country that aligns with your values, your traditions, and way of seeing life. What are your cultural norms? All of these aspects you actually can control. This is where it's much more effective just simply to relocate. I know when I first went to Russia, it was really crazy for me. I still recall this situation when I went into a bar, or it was like a cafe bar with this girl. It was like the first day I got there. It was St. Petersburg. This was like 4 years ago. I could not believe it was filled, very beautiful ladies. It was like half the place this establishment was packed. And I couldn't believe it, honestly. I'd never seen something like this in the US. I'd seen like pictures and videos from TV or from computers, and I didn't really know if this was like legit or not. And then when I was there in St. Petersburg, I was like, yeah, this is legit here. This isn't made up. And I tell people to this day that one thing you can be certain about, like with Russians, is that Russians typically don't overhype stuff to the degree that we see in other European cultures and Western places. So I saw that, I was like, whoa. I mean, there are places where there is a much higher demand for a certain type of supply, and you may meet the demand that's really desired. You may be in a scarcity mindset in your own home countries, home situation. You go somewhere else, you're like, I mean, really fulfilling that demand, and you're just like one segment, like one small segment there. It's really crazy. And this is also how you can view it when if you desire to relocate to a different country, that perhaps you're feeling like a demand that society really desires or wants, it makes sense to go there, to relocate if you can, because in your home country you may be in a scarcity situation. You may really not be filling a demand that's there, but there's other places where, I mean, you could be a complete rock star, a king in that country. You just have to be mentally able to move there. Unfortunately, there are countries that are very receptive, allow people to relocate. I think in the era that we live now, it's probably been easier than ever before for a more common person to move, vote with their feet, move to that country, and reestablish a life there. If you just are miserable or you're unhappy back at home, because the politics, whether you're in Canada, in the US, and Western Europe, you're not going to be able to really change much of that. The outcomes that you see are a result of the 10 or 20, or with bigger things, 40 years leading up to that point. We often say this in the US with presidential office, is that the guy that when he leaves office, that's actually when a lot of the effects come into place of the country or society. It's kind of this subsequent effect, and this is often the case, I think, with other areas of politics in a country or major events that happen. It's kind of a result of the 10 or 20 years prior to that. As we can see, we haven't really even seen what's happening now. We don't know, like 10 or 20 years out, what this is going to look like. I mean, it could look a lot worse than it does now. If you get out now, while you still can, you still have options available. You don't need to be worried about politics. This is one of the unfortunate tragedies, I think, and especially in places like US, is that everything's been made political. The average man has to be more concerned about politics than ever before, because it's invaded the workplace, it's invaded the tax systems. If someone has a small business, and now with this epidemic, just being in certain public spaces or being with other people close in proximity, it's impacted and invaded every area of life. Especially if you don't like political situations, look at like the Eastern European countries, that whether it's smaller or bigger, look at places like Serbia, look at Russia. These types of places, common man doesn't have to concern themselves with politics. You can focus on outcomes that you control. That's the main key here, is be more concerned about like the outcomes you have control over. And the best way is to look at the foundation, and often that's changing the environment. You have to change the core structure, and often that entails relocating. That's where politics, if you want to be a governor, you want to be a senator in the US, yeah, it serves purpose. But if you're just a common guy that wants to go about doing whatever it is you're doing, it's often a waste of time, honestly. People that are putting in place these policies, laws, it's a big structure that's putting these laws in place. It's not one politician, it's many that are all aligned with the same agenda. And that's also important to understand, that you need to look at the agendas that the political people on the whole are promoting, because that's actually as important as the individuals themselves. If you're tired of this political stuff, just look at other countries, or look at areas of life that you can control, you can dictate. Maybe you have to learn another language. Just prep yourself. That's another thing. The more prepped you are, the better and more comfortable it will be, and you'll be able to make this adjustment. So this is my input here, and give me your feedback below. Thank you.